G'day everyone, so today I've got another machining video. I'm going to be fixing a guard roller. So, this is it here. So I got this off one of my friends. You can have a look at his Instagram, Matt Murphy. You normally see his car in the Wakefield videos in the background driving it the days. So this is stuffed, so hence why it was free. Having a close look at it after I pulled it apart, this thread is completely stripped and the nut that it goes into is also like completely galled up and stripped. So what I'm going to do today is make a new one of these from scratch on the lathe. First time doing any thread cutting on this lathe, so that'll be interesting. And hopefully we can get it working again because I need it for one of my cars soon. So the first thing I need to do is work out what the original thread was. I can measure the outside diameter, which is M16, and then I use a thread pitch gauge, which is this little gauge, and there's all these little different sections in it that have teeth, and you go through and find the one that matches up with the thread on this, and once you find it, that's the pitch. It says on each one what it is. So after digging through them all, the 2mm pitch one matches up nicely, so it's M16 by 2. So because I have to remake this piece and this piece, the thread doesn't have to be exactly the same because I can remake both of them, but I'd rather tap this rather than having to thread cut it. So I thought I'll be smart and borrow an M16 tap from work, and instead I accidentally picked up an M14 one, so I can't use that. It's Friday afternoon, I want to get this done this weekend. So I went to my box. This is the next biggest tap I have, which is way too big, but I had to dig through the box of random garage sale taps where I found that left-hand tap from the other video, and I found this, which is another old Imperial thing, which I hate, 5/8 11 Whitworth. So I think we're just going to use the 5/8 11 Whitworth tap, and it's just going to be a super weird thread now. But I've got it here, so we'll make it work. Now that I think about it, my Russian communist lathe might not have 5/8 Whitworth, so I'll check that, and then if you saw that bit, it was there, and if you didn't see it, then it wasn't there. So one thing I thought that would be interesting to mention here is this is a metric thread, and this is an imperial thread. This is M16 by 2, and this is M16 by 2, which is metric course, and this is, what was it, 5/8 11 TPI Whitworth. So British Standard Whitworth basically tells you the shape of the actual thread, so you might have a 55-degree angle or a 60-degree angle, or it's basically the fine detail, but the way metric and imperial ones are measured is different. So the first number, M16 or 5/8, is just the major diameter, like the top of the thread's biggest diameter. But this is M16 by 2, so if I measure from the top of one thread to the top of another one, this is just sort of eyeing it. There is a special tool for this, but it reads 2mm, and the way these are measured in the imperial ones, these are 2mm from peak to peak, and these are 11 TPI, which is teeth per inch. So the way the imperial ones are measured is if I set this to 1 inch, and measure the teeth, there's 11 teeth that fit into 1 inch. So as usual, the imperial system uses a weird standard compared to the metric one. The metric one I think is a lot easier because you can just measure it and it's right, whereas this one you have to measure it and they have to all fit in an inch, and I'm not sure if there's any that end up as a weird fraction inside the inch, but metric system, much easier to read, but that's how the imperial one works. Hopefully my lathe has an imperial Whitworth 11 TPI setting on it. Should do, we'll check. So we're moving over here to lathe corner at the moment. The shed's pretty full at the moment, space is at a premium. Because of the lockdown, I'm sort of stuck with some stuff that I want to do, but that car I want to sell, this car doesn't normally hang out here, so I'm sort of 2 cars over capacity, so normally this is a big free area to work, but at the moment I have this much space in front of the lathe. But we can make it work, it's just lathe corner now. The drift car, as you can see, doesn't have an engine in it, so if you want to see this car finally get a hotted up engine in it, let me know, because I've got some plans. The engine's over there behind the S600, but beside that, we'll have a look at the lathe, see if it's actually got TPI thing setting for 11. So the lathe, there's a full video I did on this, but it's a, what year is it again? 1966 Stanko, where's the thing? 1A616, built in the Soviet Union, which is why everything's in Russian and has like Russian writing. Come on, camera focus. I've never done thread cutting on it. Thread cutting is like the most intimate thing you can do with the lathe. You've got to very start and stop in the right places, and this is a big lathe with a lot of inertia in it, well, big for a home lathe at least. So, and it's got no foot brake. So like the lathe I've normally used for thread cutting as a foot brake, and you stand on the brake and it just bang stops. This, you turn it off and it sort of goes and winds down, so you got to turn it off before you actually need it to stop. So this will be an interesting challenge. But first thing I got to go work out which levers need to be in what position to get our 11 TPI that's written on the tap. So this lathe, they look pretty complicated. This bottom one here is just the speed. So for tapping, we're going to want a really low thread cutting. We're going to want a low speed. So we'll go 18, which is in B. So we set this lever here. It was already in the right gear. Now I've moved it. Come on. It's like a big truck gearbox. So we want B. We're in B. 18 is speed 1, which you got up here, reduction box 1. So that's now doing 18 RPM, which is nice and slow. And then what we do is we come here to this table, and I can't see past the camera. Metric thread, English thread, TPI, so that's what we want threads per inch, and there should be an option for 11, it goes 10 to 12, oh no, here we go, 11, so now I need to work out what settings we want. So for normal pitch, I need to change the gears in the back to 25, 57, oh wait no, for 11 I need to go 25, 55. So there is gears in here that I have to take out, and as you can see, there's a bunch on the shelf here. So the first thing I'll do is open this up, and we'll set the gearing to, where did it go? This one, 20, what was it? 25, 25, 55. So we're on this side of the lathe now, which involved taking the scenic route all the way around all the cars, because this is in the way, and then climbing over this one, which is easy because it's got my nice tube front that I made, so it's much easier to stand on. And now we're in front of the S600 with the little baby S600. While I'm over here being distracted by the S600, here's new parts for the police car that you haven't seen yet. But you'll have to wait for another video for those. But if you want to see more police car updates, let me know, because I have other bits to go into it still as well. But that hasn't been getting much work lately because I have other things to do. So, ignoring the S600, this is our gear case. We'll open it up, see what's in there. I've never actually, well, I took it off when I got it, I think, just to grease it. I haven't really looked at how it actually goes together yet. So as you can see, this is held on with like thumb screws, because this is sort of a normal part of operating a lathe. You take these covers off to change gearing all the time. Oh wow, maybe I didn't open this up because it's pretty manky. So someone's written 60 on this one with a big texter, which is convenient for me. On the thing here, it's only got 2 gears. I don't know which 2 I have to change. We'll pull them off and see if it says on them what they are. So I've got my nice Overkill period correct Barco spanner from Sweden. Is Sweden and Russia... I wonder how Sweden and Russia interacted in this time period in the 60s. Pretty sure Sweden just didn't interact with anyone, like usual. But anyway, this is more unrelated stuff. We'll pull these off, and we'll get to going. Obviously, I've unplugged this from the wall, because this is a super old school machine. Like, it doesn't even have emergency stops on it. And the last thing you want is to be putting your fingers in here where there's big gears with 1,000 Newton meters of torque attached to the back of it and have it turn on. So we've unplugged it for safety. So this one's obviously a 60 tooth gear. Maybe it's a 9 tooth gear. I'm going to go with 60. The top one here, I don't know how it comes off, and I don't see a label. Oh, unless this is the one that we changed. What were the numbers again? Okay, so we need, I'm guessing this one's pressed on a bearing, so I think it stays put. And then this one up here is the one that we change, because this big one down here has this big nut, which I think, I don't even know what's going on. Should act as a tensioner. We'll take this off and we'll have a look if there's a number on it. It says, I don't know if you can read in the video, it says Z25M2. And we need 25, except we need 2555. So I think the 25 can stay on there. This really needs a good clean up under here. But that bottom one, it's a 60, well at least it says 60 in texture on it. That one will swap to a 55. Oh wait, there you go. I don't know why they bothered writing it there, because it's like literally stamped in. But anyway, this is a 60 tooth. We can put that one back on the shelf and we'll get the 55 and fit it up. Well, that's interesting. So the 55 is like a double one. This one's 54, this is 57 and 55. So this one we'll put back on in a second. Now that I've undone this, I expect, oh wait, I bet you now that when I crack this one, this whole thing should swing. there we go. So this moves, so it pivots around here, so no matter how much I move this gear is the same distance away from that one. So I reckon if I crack that one, that gear will slide. So if I put a different size gear on here, I can slide that to account for it. And then when I put a bigger gear down here, I slide this one to adjust for that. So our small one can just stay put because it was the correct one. And now the 55, I want to use the 55 side. That will go on here. And I'll slide this up out of the way. And we'll get it to drop into the right spot. Tighten the nut up. I'll put some grease on this before I start it up, but we should be geared correctly now to get our 11 TPI. So now that our gearing's set, we've got 25 and 55. The rotary lever is set to 3. I'm pretty sure this here is the rotary lever. Oh, there we go. So we'll go to 3, and then here we've got options of 1, 2, 3, 4, and we're in number 4 for 11 TPI. So, no, it says 12. Maybe I don't understand this, how I thought. Oh wait, English pitch. So we set this to, let's set this one. So, English pitch? Still not English pitch. So this won't go into gear, because this gearbox, unlike a car, is not like synchronized. Everything just sort of crunches in, because you're not supposed to change it while it's moving. What I can do though, is put, like I can't turn this at the moment because it's got so much weight behind it. If I put it between two gears, like a neutral, I still can't turn it. Why can't I turn it? We'll go between two of these ones. What? Oh, neutral here. Now can I get, there we go, straight in. And also I can hear my new grease in there squelching around. Right, we'll put this back into the speed we're in, 18 RPM. So, English pitch, we're in number 3 for English pitch, we want, and then number for 11 TPI, we're at the bottom, which is 4. So we'll set this to, come on, 4. So, I think that should be right. This is, like I said, I've never actually done thread cutting on this, so I'm literally working it out as I go. I want English thread, 11 TPI, 25, 55, we're in rotary lever, setting 3, and we're in number 4 of number 3. I just feel like this should say 11 on it here, and not 12. Give me a minute to think this over, and I'll be back. Pizza's here. Alright, so I've decided I've got to leave it in 3, even though it doesn't say 11 here. My theory being that there's way too many numbers here to actually put on the dial, so they've just put the common ones on the dial and left the other ones off. The other thing I forgot to look at and mention was it also says normal pitch here, which is this lever up here selects between normal pitch and coarse pitch. The other thing that I forgot was the way this lathe works is this here is for cutting screws and this is for regular feed, and the screw one wasn't cutting. There's another lever on the side here that's worn off, and this one changes between regular feed for making like a smooth finish and going really fast for cutting, or going like very coarse for cutting screw threads. So I'm pretty sure we've got the low speed, the right pitch, we're set to forwards, we've got setting 4, imperial thread, 18 RPM, number 3 on the thread box, and 25, 55 on the back gearing. I think that's correct. So what we're going to do is on the lathe here I've got 2 controls. Basically the lathe has the tool that moves along. These 2 here are for feed. I've got cross feed, and you can sense a weird English to Russian to English translation. The cross feed goes twice as, come on camera. The cross feed goes twice as slow as the other one, but it says twice as small. That's what these are. But for screw threading I need this big one. So the difference is this beam here with a slot in it does the smooth thread, and this does the actual like screw threads. It's very dry and has 0 oil in it, so I'm going to give it an oil and stuff before I use it because I haven't used it before. You can see all this does is, if you can see in there, so I've changed it to manual exposure. You can see when I move this handle, there's a nut here that engages and disengages off this thread. The other thing is you can see the thread moves slightly. This has actually got a curve in it, it's bent, which is kind of scary because if that's bent, it means at some point someone's probably gotten their shirt or their arm caught in it and been like wound into it, so this lathe's probably killed somebody, maybe, but we're going to use it anyway. So we're all set up, it's in gear, hit the button, see what happens. Alright, so hopefully you can hear me. You can see the lead screw is now turning with the chuck. So if I engage the feed screw here, this should start moving along. If I get it in a spot where it wants to go into gear. And you can see now it's pretty slow. Once we know it's running properly, I'll speed it up a bit. But this is now slowly moving along here, very slowly. Okay, so I've bumped it up to 45 RPM. When I engage this now, you can see it's now feeding by itself. Slowly moving along. So the next thing I need is a threading tool. So now that the lathe's running in the right setting, I need to work out which kind of tool I need for this. Standard stuff is normally 60 degree, like the points are 60 degrees. I think this is a weird one. I've just looked it up on Wikipedia. This Whitworth standard started in 1841, and looking at the drawing for it, it's a 55 degree tape, 55 degree angle. I'm just going to pretend it's 60 because I've got 60 degree tools already made. The best part about using this Whitworth tap is when someone goes to get a new nut for this in the future, they're going to be like, this friggin' Chinese thing that's modern has a British standard Whitworth tap that hasn't existed for like 100 years, so it's going to be an interesting combination. So these are my high-speed steel tools that I've made. Basically, high-speed steel is like a super high quality, high carbon steel. It's very brittle, like if you hit this, it wouldn't bend, it would snap. But basically you can grind it into whatever shape you want. And so like this one's been ground for making gears, and the one's ground for doing all sorts of things. In here somewhere is one for cutting threads. So maybe this one? Anyway, I'll find it and I'll get back to you. Well, there it goes. So thankfully, I'm surprised, but this is the threading tool I found. You can see it's a 60 degree one. I was expecting to find a little stubby one like this. The problem I have with all these tools, I made these when I had a small lathe. Well, like when I used a small lathe. So this is the size tool I normally make. Why is my camera struggling to focus so much now? This is the size tool that normally goes in a lathe that size. So it's really hard to hold the little ones, but at least I found a long one, so I should be able to set it up in there nicely. So after setting up all my lathe stuff for screw cutting, it just occurred to me, the piece of steel that I'm actually going to cut the screw onto, I don't have. So I've got my big pile of steel down there. I was going to find a bigger bit, put it in the lathe, reset everything, and then machine it down to the right size. I found this, which is, it was an axle from like a little trolley thing. The diameter that you need for a 5/8 11 thread per inch British Standard Whitworth thread is 15.8. Or 15.8. 15 points, well, depends on how I hold it. Pretty much bang on the right size. So that's lucky. So I won't have a big bit on the end for the thread, for the handle, after weld a little piece on, but that just saved me a hell of a lot of time having this axle lying around. So we'll chuck this in the lathe and we'll get ready to cut a thread into it. So I've just climbed up there and hung a light. Now you can actually see what's going on, so don't say I never do anything nice for you. Alright, so welcome to the other side of the lathe. The other thing that I forgot I have to do, I'm so interested, I'm so focused on my 100-year-old British thread, I have to turn the end of this down. So this is an M12 thread here. I do have an M12 die. I don't know if I'm going to bother threading it. I might just weld and ring on the end of it with a little bearing or something. But I will turn the end of it down, so we'll do that first. I can leave everything else set to where I had it because I don't need to power feed that. I can just turn the handle manually. What I have done is just put the gearbox for the thread cutting in neutral because I'm going to spin this at probably 400 or 500 RPM. And I don't want that whole threading gearbox cranking over that fast because it's just not made to go that quickly. So we'll turn this down to about 12 millimeters and then we can continue. Also, welcome our viewers that just skipped all the stuff around with the knobs and stuff with my little time thing that I will remember to put in the edit because normally I forget. So this is machined, get away. So this is machined down to 12mm now. The next thing I do is put a hole in the end, because when we're doing the whole long thread, we need to support it. Use a special drill bit for this called a center drill. I just thought, crap, I don't actually think I have one, and then I had a look in my toolbox. Turns out I'm pretty set for center drills. I don't know where they all came from, but apparently I have a lot of them, so we'll pick one. So basically, the center drill, you can see, it's not a regular drill bit, it's got like a small bit on the end. So I'll drill the hole with it and then I'll show you what it's for. So we've just done our center drill. What we're left with is a hole that has this nice tapered section with a hole, like, yeah, basically it's the shape of this. It's got a tapered bit and then it's got a straight bit. So what I'm going to do is the tailstock here, we're going to pop the chuck out and we're going to replace it with a live center, which is like a point with a bearing in the end. So these are the two live centers I have. I haven't gone through all of the stuff for this lathe, but some of this old stuff is really cool. You can see these ones, bottom one's a Gyrex, the top one I can't read. It says they're both made by Richard J. Piper in Sydney, Australia. So we definitely make stuff like this here anymore. This one is good, this one is seized, but it says you're supposed to fill them with grease through the back. I'll have to pull them apart and clean them up, but for the moment I'll use this one that's not seized. So my tripod is there behind the lathe. You'll have to bear with my shaky hand for a minute. But this is literally held in by nothing. They just whack in and the surface fin, like the taper on this, it just knocks in and it just stays in there with friction. So there's no bolt. The tools literally you just push them in and they stay there. So the only problem I have is this is way too small to go in there, but luckily I have an adapter for it. So the only problem is this is way too small to go in there, but luckily I have an adapter for it. So this one's actually way too, this one's actually the right size. So two adapters later and we're in the where we're meant to be. So to put these in, you literally just in, and that's it. It doesn't pull out now. To get it out, I actually have to wind this all the way back, and there's a little pin that pops it out, but they're just held in there by the friction, and that's all it has to drive it. So what we'll do now is we'll slide this out, and this little point will match up with here, and because this spins free, it'll be supported at both ends. I'm going to pull this apart, clean the grease and everything out of it, but when we're doing our thread cutting, we're only going to be running like 20 RPM, so it'll survive for our thread cutting, and then we'll give one of these a rebuild. Okay, so I've got the tailstock slid up to support the end of our piece of bar. This lock here is supposed to like latch it in. It doesn't work. There's an adjustment onto here and I've adjusted it, but it's at the end of its travel, so I think something's worn out inside. But you can also tighten this big nut to really lock it down, so I've tightened that, so this doesn't move anymore. So what we do now is the handle, we wind the live center up to fit in the end of our piece of bar and put a bit of pressure on it, just a little bit, and then this here locks this handle into place. So now if we turn the machine on, our piece is supported along its whole length. So when we're cutting at this end, it can't just bend out of the way and not get cut. So I'll reset my speed down to thread cutting, and we'll make a test pass first, see how we go. So now that we've got our tool set up with the support on the end, one last thing before we start cutting we're going to do, and that is cheat. So to double check everything is correct, what I normally do is I clamp a texter to the end of the thing, and then we'll take a pass with the texter and it'll draw a line. We can then measure it to see if our thread is correct. So here we go, we'll go forward till it's just touching. Then I'll engage the feed screw to start feeding it along. You can see it's now marking out where our thread's going to go. So I'll let it go for a little bit and then I can put the tap up against it just to double check our measurement is correct, and if it looks right, we'll start cutting. So I don't necessarily need to get the verniers. If I line the tap up with it, it looks like all our threads are correct, so that's good. So we're in the right setting, it appears. We'll remove the texter. I'm ready to actually start doing some thread cutting. So the camera's currently behind the lathe. I've just had a thought. If people are interested, let me know. it would be pretty cool to build like a little beam along the top of the lathe that the camera can sit on, so you can see straight down onto the tool and everything I'm doing, and the camera can like slide along. If people like the lathe videos, I've only done 1 or 2 of them, it's probably number 3. If people like the lathe videos, let me know and I'll put the effort in to build a camera thing for it, because I think that'd be kind of cool to get some pictures of the camera moving along with the lathe. With that aside, first thing I'll do, start the lathe and we'll just touch the tool off it so we have a 0 point. This isn't perfectly concentric on the end, but it's going to be close enough to what we're doing. So we're 0.5 millimeter deep for the first one. I'll engage the lead screw and it should start cutting. Oh, I just broke the end straight off the tip. So the second that touched the steel, it snapped the end straight off the threading tip. That was only a it was a 0.5 millimeter depth cut, 1 mil off diameter. This tip fell out of the toolbox when I picked it up. Well, there it goes. And I think it might have cracked it, because there's no way that should have cracked. So I'll go find another tool or regrind this one and then we'll try again. Okay, so I'm not exactly sure why that happened, but let's try again. I'll just go 0.25 this time. So you can see, I think we're probably, it's like 0.25, 0.3 of a millimeter, not concentric at this end. It's better up the end here, but these chuck jaws really need to be reground. They've had a pretty hard life. So comparing the original one, I'll probably just stop at the end of the texter. What you normally do is cut a little groove to stop in, but I have never done thread cutting on this lathe before and I'm not sure what it's like slowing down. So we'll just let it do its thing and we'll just try and stop it in the right spot every time and see what happens. Might break another tool. You can see as we've come further now, at the very start he was only cutting on one side, whereas now the cut's all the way across, because it's a lot more concentric down this end. Now when I get to the end here, I turn the lathe off. Wow, that went a lot further than I expected. It takes a long time to slow down. So I've turned the lathe off, I then wind the tool backwards, and I have to run the lathe backwards to get it down the other end. If I disengage the feed nut and just push it down, when I re-engage it, it won't line up again. So from now on, I can't disengage the lead screw feed nut. I have to just run the machine backwards and forwards so it always lines up. What I will do though is speed it up a bit. We're in 45 RPM. Let's go to 90. It's probably a bit fast. What does 90 look like? Oh yeah, 90 looks alright. So I've guessed where I have to turn it off. Come on, come to a stop. Yeah, could have gone a little bit further. That'll do. As usual, thread cutting in mild steel, the finish sucks, but yeah, that is what it is. Now we go backwards. So after passing backwards and forwards over it, like, I don't know, probably 10 times, we're left with what should be a fully formed thread. So I know the depth of what this is supposed to be because it was on the chart. And all I've done is, instead of using the imperial hand wheels, I've just set my dial indicator on the rest. So as I go backwards and forwards, you can see what it is. So, moment of truth now. This is the original bush. Because this is bigger, I was actually able to drill it out and just re-tap it. So we'll take the center out and see if this screws on. We'll disconnect this now. If it's wrong now, there is a way to reline this up, but it's a bit of a pain, so hopefully I don't have to do that. But here's the piece, when it goes. Does it screw on? That is the question. Oh yeah, look at that. That's pretty good. It's a little bit tight in one spot where it's probably eccentric, but the play in it, left to right, I'm very happy with that. So I'd much rather this be a little bit tighter than a little bit looser because of the load that's going on it, but that's pretty good to me. So what we'll do next, we'll pull it out of here, cut it off, and I'll put a thing on the end so I can put the original handle back through it. That's good, happy with that. So I decided the best thing to do, I've cut the threaded piece that I made off, I've cut the end of the handle, I've drilled a hole, made a boss, bonk, weld, and then good to go. Still put a thread on the end, maybe. So here we are back where we started. I ended up putting a thread on the end here because it seemed like a bit of a waste after doing that much effort to go and weld it on. So the reason this thing broke in the first place is because it sort of galled the thread up because it didn't have any, like, from the factory in China, it didn't have any it didn't have any grease or anything on it. So we're gonna making sure it's got plenty of grease this time. So once it's all back together, it should last for 2 years at least, maybe. Or maybe just one more car. I only needed to do my one car, so we'll see. But thanks, Matt, for the guard roller, because now I have one finally. Just needed a bit of fixing. Here you go. Here's the bit that I made. Hashtag built not bought. Even though it's mostly bought. Come on. I brought a split pin over here for this, now it's gone. Alright. If it was a snake, it would have bit me. So, fixed, good to go, ready to roll the guards on the 5th gen when it's getting its big 18s and it's going to look sick. So, what did we learn this time? Well, the old Soviet lathe still got it, it works, thread cutting good, first time I've done thread cutting in ages, the first time I've done thread cutting at home. The combination of a 60-something year old Soviet lathe and a 100-something year old obsolete British thread makes a $80 Chinese guard roller work again. So, hopefully you liked the video, let me know what you thought. I want to try and do more machining because I like doing it and I don't do it very much, so there'll probably be more videos on that. Subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. Also, it just makes more people see it and it helps me out a bunch, so that'd be great. And cool. I'll see everybody on the next video. Thanks very much.